Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webcast. Sitting a square inside the circle, sustainable packaging solutions driving a more circular economy. We are going to talk today about how innovative packaging solutions are accelerating, hopefully, the transition to a circular economy and also hopefully delivering on the promise of a sustainable future. I want to thank WestRock for bringing us together today. My name is Lauren Phipps. I am the Director and Senior Analyst on Circular Economy at GreenBiz Group, and I am joined today by a phenomenal panel of experts, leaders in this space for a jam-packed hour together to talk about some trends and bright spots, some areas to work on, navigating some of the nuances, opportunities for collaboration, and really how we move the needle on packaging solutions. I think that right now there is no better time for packaging innovation, and there's really been no more consequential a moment to ensure that our decisions right now are the right ones. And I am going to spare the predictable preamble about disruption. I know we are all feeling it right now, and we all know that disruption can beget opportunity. I think we're all feeling systemic repercussions in a new way and recognizing more so than ever our place within these broader systems and value chains. So we have an opportunity to leverage this moment, align ourselves, and hopefully accelerate towards a more sustainable and circular future. I am joined today by this phenomenal group. We have Nina Goodrich, GreenBlue Executive Director and Sustainable Packaging Coalition's Director, Brent Heist, Director of R&D Packaging Sustainability for Procter Gamble, Ben Jordan, Senior Director of Environmental Policy at the Coca-Cola Company, and Pat Lindner, President, Consumer Packaging and Chief Innovation Officer at WestRock. Welcome to all of you. So to start things off, personally, I need some good news. It has been a hard couple of weeks, a hard couple of months. And I think we all feel the challenge of right now. I think we see a lot of bleak headlines, and it's easy to feel a bit downtrodden and pessimistic about things. So I want to start things off on a positive note and invite each of our panelists to share one piece of good news with us, a headline that's giving you hope right now or something that we can feel good about. I invite you to share where you're calling in from. Introduce yourself a little bit and answer that question. So Nina, let us start with you.
Thank you, Lauren. And I am so happy to be on this panel and especially starting talking about good news. I am calling in from Olympia, Washington. And as many of you may know, those of us on the West Coast have been experiencing a climate event. This is Climate Week, and we have had over 7 days of heavy smoke from the fires in California, and it really helped me to focus. I grew up on the East Coast, and this is new for me, being on the West Coast. I think we're all experiencing some of these events in different ways, and one of the things that this really taught me was that we do a lot of work in forestry at GreenBlue, and we work very closely with WestRock on a number of challenges. And by and large, forestry practices in the US and Canada are really good, and the forests are considered relatively low risk, but climate is going to bring all sorts of new changes and challenges. Long, hot, dry summers are really going to change this. And so one of the things that GreenBlue's been working on with the American Forest Foundation, and WestRock was a very early sponsor of this, is our, I'm going to call it a place-based tool. That seems to be the word that folks are using now, but it is an on-the-ground landscape sustainability model, an assessment of the forest. And this is great because you can see where we need to make investments, but it's going to help us be regenerative and go beyond just looking at sustainable or responsible forest management. It's going to help us deal with climate change in the future and help us move beyond that. So I'm super excited about that and our ability to go from doing well to really doing better. So that's my hopeful introduction.
Thank you, Nina. And before I move on to the others, I want to just remind everyone that this conversation is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to it. And I want to pass it over to Brent.
Hello, and thank you. This is Brent Heist. I'm calling in from Procter Gamble, based in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'd say that the one bit of positive news is in all of this disruption, as you mentioned, we're getting consumers' attention in a way that we really haven't before. We've all been disrupted in our normal routines, and we know that consumer behavior is a lot of inertia, right? We go through our daily lives doing the same things generally over and over. This disruption that we've seen over the past 6 months has consumers now paying attention in a different way, not just because of the pandemic, but they're seeing the results of what happened when things basically shut down globally all at once. It was a real life test that nobody had ever considered, what would happen. So historically at P&G, when we've launched initiatives that have a sustainability benefit, it's been a struggle to communicate that with consumers. What will they engage in? What will they understand in the short amount of time that they're willing or able to engage in understanding what we're doing? So I'm hopeful that this change and this really, new focus and new awareness by consumers will enable us to engage them even more in the conversation of sustainability. And it'll allow for P&G and other companies to be able to bring more sustainable products to the marketplace because what consumers will already be prepped for it. They'll be waiting for it. They'll want it. So I think that's really exciting for us as we look to the near future.
Thank you. Ben, and then we'll close with Pat.
Hey there, this is Ben Jordan from the Coca-Cola Company, and I'm calling in from outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where our global headquarters is based. Building on what Brent just said, I think as challenging as this year has been from the standpoint of the global pandemic, people have a new appreciation for the interconnectedness of things, and how what we do as individuals or businesses or what have you can have an impact on others. And so I think when the conversation in the sustainability world goes to build back better, in the way we think about it at Coca-Cola, we talk about emerging stronger as a business post-pandemic. I think there are really good opportunities for driving more sustainability. And so for us, whether it's our World Without Waste program that we'll talk a little bit more, I think, about later, and driving sustainable packaging and our 2030 plans there, or our long-term goals on climate or science-based target and our 2030 plans there, I think there's a great prospects for moving things forward.
Thanks, Ben. And Pat.
Great, thanks so much, and welcome everyone. And special thanks to Nina and Brent and Ben for joining us. This is a wonderful session, and we're really pleased that you're here. I think just echoing what the others have mentioned is that we're particularly excited here at WestRock that our customers and our partners continue to come forward, even in the midst of all the distractions with COVID and other aspects. They continue to come forward with really important sustainability packaging issues. And so we've been working with Brent and his team at P&G. I'm recently launching a new fiber-based, fully recyclable package for the deodorant Old Spice as well as Secret deodorant products at P&G. And we worked with Ben on a can collar solution in Europe. And these are just a couple of examples where we continue to see high demand for these products. And that's really exciting because we had wondered early on after COVID struck if, in fact, we would be seeing a setback or a pullback in some of these trends, and we have actually seen an acceleration, which is really exciting. I should also say that WestRock is a fiber-based packaging company based in Atlanta, Georgia, headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. I happen today to be working remotely, as many of us are today in this world, and I'm in upstate New York.
Awesome. Thank you. I am in the GreenBiz office, which is empty right now in Oakland, California, and we have definitely been feeling the smoke and I think the visceral feeling of climate change that I know is not new, but it felt very, very real recently. And you also teased some of the themes that I want to just jump right into and get specific about to hear sort of what is actually happening and how you're actually addressing some of these dual challenges. So you all sort of mentioned COVID and climate. This is, of course, Climate Week, and we're thinking so much about shifting towards kind of this better future, but I think a lot of us feel like there's some conflicting needs and, increasing packaging right now for health and safety, thinking so much about climate change, and it can feel like you can't sort of solve for both at the same time. And There's some nuance and trade-offs to it. So Ben, let's start with you. Coke has some ambitious goals around plastics, around packaging, and around climate. Has your trajectory shifted at all with regards to these layered challenges, and how are you thinking about navigating those potentially competing challenges that you have to tackle?
So as I said before, with our World Without Waste program, that's a 2030 plan for packaging sustainability. And we have goals for 2025 and 2030 around the design of our packaging. As of 2025, we will only put 100% recyclable packaging into the marketplace. We're at about 88 or 90% today. We also have a goal that by 2030, we want every package that we put into the marketplace to be at least 50% recycled material. And then around collection and recycling by 2030, for every package we put into the marketplace, we want to help bring them back for collection and recycling. So these are long-term goals. It's a 10-year plan, right? We launched it actually 2 years ago in 2018. So we don't see our long-term plans there changing. Of course, we've had some hiccups this year with the slowdown and the pandemic. Some of the things that we've seen, shifting consumption patterns with more people being at home. A lot of our consumption is people on the go. It might be in restaurants, or it might be convenience stores, or on the go through travel and what have you. More home consumption, means a slight shift in the different types of packaging and product formats, that we have out there, which can impact the sustainability aspect. One of our key strategies around our World Without Waste program are things like, we call it bring your own package, or packageless solutions, where, you could bring your tumbler into a restaurant or a campus or university student center and refill it, or what have you. With the focus and for good reasons on hygiene and safety. There's been a little bit less of that, right, in the short term. Now, again, long term, we think we'll be on track. It's just a matter of dealing with these hiccups in the short term.
And you at P&G, there's a challenge in figuring out how to navigate some of the nuances between both COVID and commitments?
I don't think there's direct challenges. I'll back up a bit and share our Ambition 2030 goals, similar to what Ben shared for Coca-Cola. That we have very broad goals around sustainability, climate, gender equality, social justice, and within those, specific to this discussion, our goals of having 100% recyclable or reusable packaging by 2030. And also reducing our usage of virgin petroleum-derived resin by 2030. We know that these are both goals that will continue to move us along the path of more sustainable products and packaging. Consumers, adjusted very quickly to the COVID situation. We've all heard about the runs on toilet paper and other essentials. So our business jumped in very quickly. Fortunately for us, we do provide a lot of those household essentials that consumers really want and need. And through all of that, we were looking at it through the eyes of, as well, of still doing the right thing, right? Ensuring that we're delivering towards our goals of Ambition 2030. So it didn't really slow us down there at all. If anything, I would say that it's really sped up our efforts. As I said earlier, we know that consumers are paying attention now more than ever, and we expect they're going to demand more of us now more than ever. So we're ready. We're developing these new solutions along with our supplier base so that we're ready, that we can be out there with the solutions for consumers and working collaboratively across the space with NINA and the SBC and the other collaborative groups that we're a part of, because we certainly know that we can't do this alone. It's not a P&G solution. It's not a Coca-Cola solution. It's an industry solution that we're all working towards.
Well, I wanted to talk about for a few minutes, but before, Nina, do you share Brent and Ben's bold optimism and enthusiasm about how, there really are trade-offs between climate and COVID and sort of shifting consumer behaviors and navigating these challenges? Are you as optimistic as they are about those two conflicting, potentially, challenges?
I think so, because I think one of the things COVID did is it helped us understand how we can come together as people and actually change and protect each other. And I think we need that same sense of urgency associated with both climate change and packaging sustainability. So I do share that optimism that we've recently been shown we can make a difference. We can change things. And so I think that that is really going to help us move forward in the future. The other thing, and this is just sort of an odd indicator, but last December, the SPC had 350 members. We're over 500. Now that's during COVID. To go from 300 to 500 is amazing. And so what that tells me is that there's a lot of companies that have had the time to think about what is going to be important in the future and really want to participate. So yes, I'm optimistic.
I love that, and congratulations, that is huge. And Pat, let's close on the climate conversation, but I'd love to sort of hear how you're thinking about climate right now, and if you're feeling like the same sense of ambition is not slowing down with regards to shifting consumer behaviors and needs during this time.
Yeah, absolutely we are. And you heard Ben and Brent, as well as Nina, talk about some of the exciting things that are happening. So how that translates and manifests itself for WestRock is that we get the request to help people come up with more sustainable packaging solutions. And so for us at WestRock, innovation in our packaging is closely linked and intertwined with sustainability. And so we're working hard to make our products more recyclable, to make them more compostable, reusable, and then not only design our products that way, but also ensure that we can collect those products, that they are recycled, and then they're put back into the raw material stream for the circular economy and really close that loop. And so those are the things that we're focusing on, and we made some important steps in this arena recently. We recently hired Rajiv Banavali as a Senior Vice President of Science, Material Science and Innovation for this company. And that's really important because in order for us to solve some of our customer solutions, we're going to have to come up with completely new materials. We need to make sure they're grease resistant, oil resistant, resistant to hot and cold liquids for food service, beverage, healthcare, all sorts of applications that need sustainable packaging. And so we're investing in this space, and we're investing because it's retailers and it's companies like P&G as well as Coca-Cola that are asking us to do this. And so we're really excited about that.
That's great. Well, I want to talk a little bit about collaboration and partnerships working with your customers, as well as working with your competitors across the industry. Before we get into that, I want to invite our audience to submit their questions. I certainly have plenty of my own, but I do want to hear sort of what everyone is wondering and thinking about and drive our conversation based on that. So please submit those questions in the Q&A box. But let's talk about collaboration, and specifically let's start with consumers and consumer engagement. It's something that you all have mentioned in different ways. And sort of consumers, as you mentioned, Brent, are far more engaged and demanding some of this stuff right now. How do you think about this push and pull between meeting consumer demands and pushing consumers to be more sustainable and sort of forcing more sustainable choices for them? How do you think about where to start, or when to push and when to pull?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the best way to look at it is if you can come up with a solution, develop an innovation that doesn't ask the consumer to give something up, you have an obvious win there, right? It's something that you're enabling them to live a sustainable lifestyle without giving something up in performance or convenience or cost. That's a great challenge in front of all of us. And we also have to recognize that it might not be one solution. So Pat mentioned earlier the EcoPush product from WestRock that we've launched within our antiperspirant deodorant category. So it's a replacement for the polypropylene canisters that we're all very familiar with. It's a fiber-based solution. We know that a lot of our consumers like this as a solution, as a replacement for that plastic packaging as they see it. But we also understand that it doesn't work for all consumers. So we've developed a solution that is basically both. It allows the consumers who are seeking that type of fiber-based packaging solution to purchase a product that they love and to be able to use this more sustainable packaging. At the same time, we're working collaboratively across the industry for solutions that enable more people to be able to recycle those polypropylene canisters. So again, it's not a single solution in the space. Oftentimes it's multiple solutions speaking to different types of consumers, because we all know that the diversity of individuals out there. Consumers are those diverse individuals. We need to understand and really deliver solutions for everybody.
Ben, how about perspective? How do you balance listening to consumers about what they want, sort of pulling on them a little bit, sort of what you think we really need fundamentally to shift towards a more sustainable future?
Sure. We know 2 billion times a day around the world consumers enjoy our products, and usually that's in a package. And so first and foremost, it's making sure that they have the right information to know what sorts of choices they ought to be making, and what are the sustainability trade-offs maybe between the packages. And how we, all packages have benefits and trade-offs, right? And we want to be clear about that. We also want consumers to be clear, to Brent's point, about the recycling options that are available to them and what to do with the package after they've consumed the product, right? And so part of that is working to make sure there are good options for consumers, market by market around the world, but then making sure that they're clear about what those options are, what the right options are, and then motivating them to make those choices. But it really is a balance.
And Pat, customers are, well, two of them on the call right now. What's the driver for some of these choices and shifts? Is it, Ben or Brent calling you up and saying, hey, we need a more sustainable option? Is it you coming to them and saying, hey, we need to push sustainability in a different way? And thinking, taking a step back, not just your relationships, but maybe sharing any best practices with other suppliers as they think about how to shift their own customers?
Yeah, I think our insights come from a number of different places. I certainly think from Coca-Cola and P&G, that's an obvious one, because they're coming to us for solutions to meet some of their goals. I think the SPC and what Nina and the group does there, ideas come from that as well. But we also do our own sensing with different brand owners as well as consumers out in the marketplace. And for example, one of our recent surveys showed that about 70% of consumers indicate that sustainability influences their interest and their willingness to purchase a product. And then when you add safety and security, especially in the food industry and food service industry, add safety and security of the food in that to sustainability, it's well over 80%. And so what we do is we try to get deep insights into the market, and then work obviously with our customers and other groups that are in SPC, and try to get a holistic view of what the needs are. And then make sure that even before sometimes our customers ask us for what their needs are, we have anticipated that and we're ready to provide those solutions.
Nina, kind of first look across different pieces of the packaging space, and you have a pretty good perspective on what all the different moving pieces are. So when you think about those areas of collaboration and places where people need to be working together better, what do you see? Where do you feel like there's not enough energy and collaborative approaches coming to fruition?
Well, I think there's sort of a number of comments or directions I could go here. One is remembering that sustainability is not just about recovery. It's also about sourcing, it's about material health, it's about optimization. And oftentimes we all get tied up in recyclability, compostability, or reusability, and yet sourcing is a really important part of sustainability as well. And I think that one of the messages that's happening clearly is brands, such as Brent just said, are thinking about fiber-based packaging and thinking about replacing some types of plastic packaging with fiber-based packaging. And so there's a great sourcing story there. But the other piece of that then is, as we create these new innovations, we have to make sure that people understand the current collection system and recycling system. And one of the benefits of having companies at the table together is you have the folks that are collecting and recycling the packages able to inform the people that are designing the packages in terms of what's possible and what's not. And someone like a WestRock is in a unique position, because not only do they have sort of the front end of the process, but they also have the back end of the process, because they have MRFs and mills. And so I think one of the things that happened that's there were myths in the industry about what you could do and what you couldn't do. And I think WestRock, along with some of its other partners, have started busting those myths and saying, no, we can do this. We can take this type of material, and this is how to inform design for the future. So that collective conversation that's starting to happen is so beneficial in terms of us making things that we can actually collect and reuse.
Thanks, Nina. We are getting a lot of amazing audience questions, so keep them coming. But one that you just touched on a little bit is, unsurprisingly, the gap between infrastructure and actual recyclability versus the theoretical recyclability if something is designed to be recycled. So I'm wondering if any of the other speakers want to touch on that and share a little bit of how you're thinking about that gap and how to solve for it.
I'll jump on that, Lauren, and maybe tie it back to the conversation earlier about collaboration, right? Because I do think it's the full collective action that will help solving this one, right? And so whether it's efforts like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, UN Environment, Global Commitment on, plastics, or whether it's, initiatives like some of the things the World Economic Forum are doing, or the U.S. Plastic Pact, sort of led by Ellen MacArthur Foundation and World Wildlife Fund. Many of us are part of that. It's going to be that collective action that's going to make it happen. And there's a responsibility for governments in there, there's responsibility for corporations in there. There's a policy element. There are lots of things that we can do without policy. But I think, again, great opportunity.
Definitely want to underscore the Plastics Pact as well. Yeah, Pat, please jump in.
Yeah, just to comment as well, just from a consumer education and awareness standpoint, we recently, along with Domino's, launched a report that was validated by third parties that demonstrates that pizza boxes are recyclable. Turns out that over 70% of municipalities have the ability to recycle pizza boxes. The issue is that consumers didn't know or are confused about whether they are recyclable because they contain trace amounts of grease or cheese or other contamination. And what we did is did a technical study and demonstrated that you can, in fact, recycle these. So now what we're trying to do is create awareness. And then, as Nina mentioned, we also have 18 recycling facilities around the United States. And so what we're doing is creating an awareness, not only is it recyclable, and then how do we collect those with municipalities, then recycle it, and get that into the over 5 million tons of paperboard that we recycle and use in our facilities every day. So consumer education here is a really important part, and anybody can do it. It can come from any company that has the technical knowledge to create the awareness and educate people.
So how are you doing that? How, when you said, I think you just said 70% of municipalities can take and recycle these corrugate boxes. How do you know if you're in one of those municipalities? How do you actually tell consumers, we have this patchwork system, so how do we get there?
Yeah, and so in this particular case, number one, I would say call your municipality and check. That's the best way to do it. That way you know for sure. I think the other is that there are different players like Domino's and ourselves and others that are trying to create the opportunity to do a simple, click on either on a website or maybe even on the box itself that would allow the consumer to see not only where it's recycled, but where you can put it and where to take it. And so there's a lot of technology, both on the material science side, but also on the digital side, that we think is really important. And certainly WestRock, Coca-Cola, P&G, and others are working on such solutions just to help people out, make it easier for them.
Well, I personally don't think that having every individual call up their municipality to see if their pizza box is recyclable is the most feasible thing. What we said about educating on the packaging, you have this huge place to educate consumers and engage them. Brent, do you have anything to add around consumer education and engagement? You mentioned that at the beginning.
Yeah, and it is critical. It's something that brands uniquely can do in the context of their understanding of their consumers, right? Each brand knows the equity of their brand. They understand their consumers very well. They know how to engage them in a way that's meaningful. So it really is up to the brands to speak to their consumers on the terms that they understand from that brand. as well as using industry standards. So the How to Recycle label is critical to us in North America. And Nina's smiling now because that is an SPC initiative, but it is a way that we as an industry can come up with a common way to communicate with consumers so that each time they pick up a package, they don't have to try to interpret the various forms of recycling messages on the packaging. So we believe that's a wonderful way to start the conversation with consumers, get them actually engaging with the packaging at the end of its used life, to know what to do with it. And we want all of those to be recyclable and then actually put back into the recycling stream, so that on the back end, that the companies that do have goals like we do to be reducing virgin petroleum plastic, we're going to need the recycled materials. So we have to get this material back. We'll be purchasers in the market, creating value in that stream, but we understand that it's a full stream solution that has to be developed.
Absolutely. Nina, I ask you to share a little bit about the How to Recycle. I think it's a crucial piece of information and vital for this conversation.
Thanks, Lauren. I'd love to. And thanks, Brent, for mentioning it. And I'm happy to say that all of the brands on this webinar use the How to Recycle label and have been supportive for a very long time, which is wonderful. We're reaching over 300 brand members now of the How to Recycle label, so we're starting to reach critical mass, and many retailers have made commitments to put it on 100% of their own brand packaging. So we are reaching the point where it is starting to have a significant impact in helping consumers understand what to do with each piece of the package, because not all packages are just one thing. Oftentimes there is a tray inside of a box, and you need to know what to do with both pieces of that package. So the label is really helpful to reduce contamination because it helps consumers understand when they should be throwing something out versus when they should be putting it in the recycle. And we all know that wish cycling occurs where people want to put things in that they ought not to put in. And so this helps with that. But the even more, I think the biggest impact we've had, and I'd love to hear from the brands on this as well, is How to Recycle does an analysis of every single package that's sent to us for a label. And then it goes back to the brand with recommendations, whether they want them or not. So it might say to switch to a different type of shrink sleeve label, or it might say to use something different to make the package more recyclable. And there's been over 100,000 of those recommendations going back. And we've had brands tell us that there's been over 2,000 design changes just based on the feedback that they got for applying for the label. So hopefully that's a tool as well to create better packaging, in addition to helping the consumers know what to do with it.
That is amazing. Maybe to stay on that thread a little bit, this is not one conversation just about plastics or paper. And Ben and Brent, when you think about designing packaging, you're of course material agnostic. You're just trying to figure out the best package for the product. How do you begin to think about making those choices and prioritizing the different sustainability attributes? We had a question about that as well, sort of where do you start and how do you think about this constellation of potential opportunities and challenges in prioritizing the packaging type and material as well as the sustainability attributes? I know that's kind of a thorny question, but Ben, do you want to try to tackle it first?
Sure, and I guess I would say, and maybe distinguish between existing package portfolio, right, and then new materials and new packages, right, and with our existing portfolio, you know, we have a few key principles, right? I mean, we try not to pit our packaging against each other, if you will, you know, on one level, but at the same time, as I was saying before, you know, being clear about what the benefits and the trade-offs are of each package and thinking about the occasions and the places and where you're using each package and that, right? But with all of the existing packages, how do you improve, you know, okay, whatever that profile is today, how do you improve upon it, right? And whether that's taking material out, whether it's using more recycled material, you know, whether it's moving, for example, to more of a bio-based material for a PET plastic package, so same package but different material or improved material, or even things like using marine plastic, you know, into a new bottle, right? So it's a combination of things, but all towards the goals, right, of more sustainable than it was the day before, kind of a thing, but towards these 2025 and 2030 design goals, as well as making sure that, all right, whatever we put out there, let's make sure there's a way for it to come back and be used into something valuable. From the standpoint of new materials, in addition to just the standard sort of sustainability assessment, you would look at things around just, scalability and performance. And, is it realistic to think, this package can really do what we need it to do over the long term? But I would say we have been a little bit guilty in the past of, okay, you want that holy grail solution, that's going to be the zero impact package material or what have you. I think we've gotten better at realizing, okay, there might be 5 to 10% solutions out there that are very beneficial. They may only ever be 5 to 10%, but that doesn't mean you don't do them, but you go after them and leverage that 5 to 10 or 20, whatever it might be.
Thanks. Anyone have any additions there?
Yeah, and I would say, as you're looking at packaging design, the first thing that a package has to do is it has to protect the product and the consumer. So 5 billion consumers a day use a P&G brand, so we have a huge responsibility there to ensure that the products that they're using and the consumers themselves are protected. So you have to start there, which certainly gives you some limitations. But then beyond that, as you're designing a sustainable package, we always look to the science. And that's where it gets to be challenging, because as you do a life cycle assessment, there's never a single answer, right? As you look across the typical life cycle assessment measures, there's gives and takes in the various packaging designs that you can consider. So that is the key challenge, is identifying what is better sustainability-wise. And as Ben said, not looking for that holy grail, the ultimate solution. Let's do what we can now with what we have available, where the industry is today, where consumers are today. Make the improvements now, but continue working towards those goals, the 5-year and 10-year goals that everyone has.
Thanks. And a good place to jump in there, this conversation is actually practical for folks and helpful with key takeaways. One question that came up specifically for Pat, but I want to ask everybody, is from a packaging perspective, Pat, and then from a brand perspective, Ben and Brent, and just general knowledge, Nina, what resources can you point people to? What associations are you part of? What amazing resources do you think people should look to when actually trying to make the decisions about these trade-offs and figure out how to get from here to this wonderful, sustainable system that we have? Pat, I'll start with you, then Nina, Ben, and back to Brent, of just a couple resources you can share with folks.
Sure. I think there are a number of places, and I think it's really important here to make sure that consumers understand what the third-party certification and validation of some of the claims that might be out there, because somebody could say that something's recyclable, but it's very different to say that it's broadly recyclable, and organizations like SPC and others help to address those issues. There's also initiatives around sustainable forestry. So the Forest Stewardship Council certifies, for example, those suppliers, those fiber-based companies that use sustainable forestry practices. I think, again, that's third-party certified. And then around compostability, there's a lot of question on what's compostable and what's not. Western Michigan, as well as a number of other third parties, have certification programs. So really look for those certification labels and get educated on that. And that's one of the things we try to do, is educate consumers, and working with our brands and our customers and our partners to collaborate on educating people on what are the true valid certifications associated with that, so customers can really, when they're purchasing or considering purchasing packaging, they can really understand what they're buying and feel good about it.
Thanks. I of course would point people to SPC and the amazing work that GreenBlue does overall, but are there any specific resources that you'd share with folks or places you've heard to look to?
Well, I'll go back to how to recycle, and I didn't talk about its sister labeling program, How to Compost, because sometimes it's very confusing. And one of the things, Seattle has mandatory composting, and people stand in line all the time to do the wrong thing. So from that perspective, sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. And so the label can help distinguish. I think it's also important when we were talking earlier about the confusing types of packaging that are kind of in the middle, and maybe your municipality takes it and maybe they don't take it. That's only, of all the labels that we put out, it's only 15%. So it's still a large number, but in the context of things that are absolutely recyclable or absolutely not recyclable, it's a small amount that's kind of in that fuzzy middle. So hopefully not too many people are going to have to call their municipalities, and the websites actually probably work a little bit better than that. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thanks. Ben, where do you look for support and resources?
Sure. Just picking up on one of Nina's comments, is there are groups like the Recycling Partnership in the U.S. that do a really good job of engaging with municipalities, and I think trying to drive more consistency municipality to municipality about some of those gray area types of places and, or packaging. And I do think that figures into the design conversation a lot, right? And so I think that's an important one. And then, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we've mentioned them before, but, they really own the global dialogue around the circular economy in a lot of ways and engaging companies around that. And they have just launched a new design community program where they're building a global network of design professionals to get together and think about these very topics. So I would point to that one as well.
Yeah, and that is the key challenge.
Brent,
there's not a list or a website that you can go to and really figure out how do I design my package, right? Because there's so many variables involved. So yeah, all of the organizations mentioned, certainly SPC, TRP, we certainly engage with to learn ourselves. We're all learning in this space as we go. And the Association of Plastic Recyclers in the plastic space has been a fantastic organization in North America to learn about what the challenges are in that recycling stream and how to design your packaging so that it can be collected, sorted, and recycled. And then certainly the certifications in the fiber space are critical. Absolutely using FSC and other certification programs. So it's something that each company needs to, based upon their products and packaging, go out and find those organizations and certifications that can certainly help them deliver.
Thank you. Hope that was helpful. Some ways to learn more about some of these big ideas in our strategies. We are quickly running out of time. I have one audience question I want to bring in. I've been peppering them in, but please continue to ask them. Reusable packaging. So many folks are asking about that. How do you think about where reuse fits into single-use, recyclable, compostable strategies, and where do you see it within this broader solution set? Anyone want to take that first?
So for us, refillable packaging is a key part of our strategy in many markets around the world. We have 50 markets that are 50 countries that are using at least 25% of their portfolio is in refillable packaging. We have 25 of those markets where it's 50% or greater. We have both refillable glass bottles and refillable plastic bottles out there. There's also the possibility, of course, as I mentioned before, around what we call packageless or bring your own package, where can you use more refillable bottles and things like that, to get your Coca-Cola products that way. Very much a critical part of the strategy. But I go back to the point before around, just trade-offs in occasions, right? And it may not be the right package for a realistic expectation, in every place and every moment in time. So you're going to have a diversity of packaging.
And I'll build on that for P&G. Refillable, reusable is certainly a strong part of our strategy. So as I mentioned, our Ambition 2030 goal is to have 100% recyclable or reusable packaging. We're doing the test now, active testing to find out what works with consumers. We're a part of the Loop initiative, testing a packaging program where the reusable packaging comes back to us to be refilled. We certainly have models that we're testing where the consumers do the refills. Olay has recently tested refillable pods that go into the jars so that the jars become a durable packaging for the consumers. So I'd say it's the early stages of this. We need to understand for each brand, its equity, and the consumers who use it, what works for them and what is the best solution. So I'd say a lot more to come in this space. We're excited about it. We think it engages the consumers in an entirely different way than they've typically thought about our brands. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So we look forward to growing this out as we learn more.
Absolutely. And one thing that to me stands out around the Loop initiative and something that Tom Zaki and the whole team do incredibly well is to center consumer experience and think so much about making the experience better and solving new problems. So their containers are durable. They're also beautiful. They also, ship them right to your door and pick them up. So thinking systemically, not only about, okay, where does the material go, what's LCA and all that, but thinking, how do we improve consumer experiences to get them to want this, not only because it's maybe more sustainable, but because it is just simply better across the board. Now, again, quickly running out of time. Got one more question for you. We have a question around thinking globally. A lot of has centered on sort of U.S. markets, but question around how do people find information and for products globally if you're not able to just call your local municipality? How do you think about navigating that beyond just the U.S. market?
Sorry, we broke up. Was that a question for me?
Yes, sorry. So
yes,
question
okay.
about
Thank you. Yes, I caught the question. I just wasn't sure if it was for me or not. So yeah, so I think in each of the regions it's different, and I think it's in in different certainly different stages in Europe and in each country within Europe. So you really have to do your research on a local and a regional basis to understand what is recyclable, what is compostable. There are a number of trade associations in each of those regions that we're working on it, but I think it really, if you're in one particular region, you just need to go to, certainly not individually only to your municipality, but go to the agencies that do some of the listing and can help you understand what is recoverable, what's recyclable. And certainly at WestRock, we continue to work with our partners to make sure that not only are materials recyclable, but they're also recycled and come back into the stream. And so we have a number of programs underway, for example, where we work with retailers to actually purchase their recycled material and then bring that back into the stream. And so I think it's consumers continuing to ask questions and reach out in their local municipalities, and companies like ours are certainly a part of making sure we close that loop.
Great. I have a question for you, a little bit of a tricky one. What do you see, this is an audience question, what do you see as the long-term shakeout of paper, cardboard, glass, metal, and plastics? Who are the winners and who are the losers?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't like to think of winners and losers. I think we need systems for all materials, and that's part of the problem. Our collection rates are not great across the board to begin with. So number one, we need to process our materials at home. We shouldn't be thinking about sending them elsewhere. And so I like to think that we have to create bigger circles to allow these materials to be building blocks for new products, some of which are packaging, but some of which are broader than packaging. Back to your opening remarks about systems. So I'll go back to what Brent said. The most important thing is protecting the product, because the footprint of the product is so much bigger than the footprint of the package. So from the perspective of thinking about packaging in terms of sourcing, so understanding where it's coming from, and PCR is a great source for in the sourcing bucket, material health, optimization of the package, not too much, not too little, and then recovery are sort of the four major buckets. And if the material ticks all those buckets, and then the second thing would be our collection system. And can we collect it? Can we reprocess it? And have an end market. And for many of these materials, even traditional materials, glass struggles with its end market today. And that is a viable packaging material. So I think we need to think of these things for all of these materials. I can't just pick one winner and one loser, but what I can say is they all need a little bit of future love.
Completely agree. Anyone to add on that tricky or contentious question? Well, I think one thing that people get wrong about the circular economy all the time is the idea of sort of closed loop specific systems of this thing must become the exact same thing. And really we're thinking holistically about materials and how materials move through our system as commodities, not as it must be the exact same thing as before, because you have to think locally, you have to think about the actual supply chain. And I think that's something that conceptually folks tend to miss. As we wind down, I want to give a chance for all of our speakers to have a final word in the conversation. And we started with, what's one thing that's giving you hope right now? I'd love to ask each of you to share one thing that you're looking forward to, one thing within the future of packaging and packaging innovation that we should be looking for on the horizon and looking forward to learning more about. So we'll go around the horn, maybe Ben, Brent, Pat, and Nina, you can have the last word. Ben, over to you.
I guess I'll go back to how I started a little bit, in that, this notion of interconnectedness. I think, the collaboration that will come from that. I think, while we've been collaborating for a long time together, we together with WestRock, we participated in their first sustainable forestry initiative audits 20 years ago, right? So we've been working on this together for a long time, but I still feel like we more broadly are just scratching the surface in terms of what collaboration can really do. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how all of the pre-work almost that we've done over the last few years really turns into action towards these 2030 goals.
Yeah, and building on that, as we do approach the 2030 goals, I think it's going to be very exciting to see all of that groundwork coming to fruition. All of the challenges that we recognize in the system are currently being worked, actively being worked by P&G, Coca-Cola, others in the industry that we know the solutions are there. It's just a matter of continuing the hard work, continuing to drive it forward. Excited now that consumers are seeming to be more engaged. That will only help us because it will enable us to do these things and do the improvements that are needed in our packaging and in the system, and talk to consumers about them in an open way so that they're understanding how the progress is being made. That it's not something that you just do behind the scenes because it's the right thing to do. You're doing it out in front of everybody because everybody is asking now and everybody wants to see us succeed.
Awesome, thank you. What do we look forward to?
Sorry, is that for me? Okay, yep, thank you. So I think Brent and Ben summed it up really well, and I think that what we're looking forward to is we're looking forward to the toughest challenges that are out there. We want people bringing things to us that they think are impossible. We want to bring our innovation and push the limits. And there are a number of things in fiber-based packaging that people might say are impossible, but we want to hear about them. And we want to have a shot at that. And I think the other thing that's exciting to watch is certainly fiber-based packaging is going through a lot of innovation, but all the other materials are too. And I think it's fun. When you go to an SPC, it's great to see all the innovation that's happening with so many different materials in the packaging space. And I think that's good. That's really good overall for the consumer's perception of packaging. And we are in that industry, and we want to continue to see that innovation. So I think over the next couple of years, given the interest there is in the consumer, this is going to be a really exciting area, certainly for us, but certainly the big brands as well.
So I'm going to pick up on the innovation word and say our fall meeting is next week, SPC Advance, and as part of that meeting, we asked folks to submit packaging innovations, and there's an awards event. There were over 80 amazing submissions, many of which were in paper, but it covers all classes of materials. It covers new biopolymers. It covers films that are made from forest materials, so making new polymers out of forests. Going through this and thinking, how are we ever going to judge these? Because they were amazing. So from that perspective, innovation is alive and well and absolutely working with sustainability principles. But the thing I'm looking most forward to is I think this is a decade of regenerative thinking. And so as we think about our forests, as we think about agriculture, as we think about carbon, that word is being used more and more in forestry and in fiber-based packaging. It's certainly something that is very doable, and our forests are so important to us and to the future that I think we're going to see great things to come in this space, and we're going to see the word regenerative used on a lot more areas that we didn't think possible.
Nina, where do people find this question coming? Where do I learn solutions?
They will be announced next week. So the finalists are all on our website right now. So you can go to the SBC website and look at many of the finalists. I think WestRock is among some of those, and look at those packages. But the winners will be announced next week.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, we have just 3 more minutes, but in this little amount of time, I want to throw in one extra question. What is one area you'd love to see a solution for? So Nina, you of course have seen all these innovations, but if there's one problem that you'd love to see people solving right now within this thorny world and complex layers of packaging and packaging innovation, where would you like to see more innovation? Ben, Brent, Pat, then back to Nina. Quick, rapid fire.
I think more innovation in the collection infrastructure and getting whatever we all put out there, getting it back.
Yeah, and I'd say more innovation in the processing of those materials that are collected to make them as clean and I'd say contamination-free as possible.
And I would say I would look forward to seeing more around safety and security, antimicrobial, antibacterial aspects of packaging, and add that to the environmentally sustainable solutions we're talking about. I think that is safe, secure, and sustainable package. I think that's a tremendous future.
I'm going to go with Ben and say collection, and just films. We hardly collect any of them. There's so much of that material available. We can't reprocess it if we can't collect it. So we need to rethink new collection systems to get these materials back in a cost-effective way.
Amazing. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, but I think this conversation has been a fantastic, just widespread conversation around the landscape of packaging innovation. We've heard about some of the amazing progress that brands are making, some of the bold ambitions, and had a great conversation around how to get there a little bit more. We, of course, have barely scratched the surface, but I do want to thank our speakers, Pat, Brent, Nina, and Ben. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise here, and thank you to WestRock for convening us. This conversation has been recorded if you want to share it with your colleagues. I hope everyone has a great climate week, has a great day, and until next time, be well.
Thank you.